Hello and welcome to Vernissage TV in New York. I'm Theodore Bouloukos with Timothy Hull at Freight and Volume, where his show celebrating Egyptology surrounds us. And we're actually in front of some amazing, would they be pen and ink drawings?
They are blue gel pen paper. Well, an important part of this exhibition is the discovery of King Tut's tomb, because it was the first completely intact tomb, and so it became such a focal point of Egyptomania that this tomb was found with all this jewelry and devices and canopic items, and so that became like a really important concept for drawing and making works in this exhibit. King Tut and the people who discovered his tomb is a recurrent theme through all of this work.
And so now, in terms of organizing the show, now you decided to almost create a kind of tomb-like or
museum
crypt-like.
Well, it does
tableau.
Vacillate. Well, it does vacillate between being like some kind of
it's like a mausoleum.
Crypt or mausoleum where all these personal effects are laid out, but it also is referencing like museumology and the way in which museum exhibitions are set up, or even the way that bric-a-brac, like souvenir shops, are set up.
Sure, yeah. No, there is that kind of the fact
like
that you have, well, also the fact that you have like multiple obelisks on the table.
Right. Well, this piece actually,
and grouped together, everything in their own pairings.
This piece actually is a great example of the trifecta that I was going for in terms of the the conceptualism of the show. Is that this table I want to reference like a bric-a-brac sales table that you would see in an airport in Cairo, but also look like a museum table of all these multiple pieces of things, which you see at the Met all the time.
Sure, but if we look behind us, you see something that's very kind of dioramic in terms of the tableau.
Yes, well, it has like a dioramic quality, but also a minimalist quality too.
Okay.
That was important to me, that this work also references like minimalist tropes and the ideas of minimalism, like the baseness of color and the repetition of an object.
I love what you've done with these sort of specimen jars.
Well, this is also, I'm trying to reference like the objectification of like
and the archaeological.
Well, I want it to look like
finds.
Indiana Jones' office too.
Okay.
I want this also to look like how you would imagine like an archaeologist's office with like little precious broken items on sticks and
absolutely. Sure.
Or even like a museum setup, like you see here, this temporarily removed card
on loan to someone.
To another museum.
Right. So now, in terms of the way you draw most of these, do you draw them first and then, in some cases, paint them, or have you been able to finesse your style so that you can paint the way you draw?
I think that I actually have finessed the style where I paint how I draw. I feel like first and foremost I was drawing, but I also, previous to this, I did a lot of painting. And it's been really important to me to figure out how I can meld drawing and painting together and vice versa. So that's why some of these.
And how do you, Tim?
Well, some of these paintings look like drawings, but they're actually paintings. It's a King Tut necklace.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
The Egyptians were rather fashionable.
Yeah.
In a way that we don't quite understand.
But I mean, they're so interestingly illustrated.
Right, Egyptologist and Egyptian.
Yeah, but it's the construction of them that I like so much. It's that you're almost surgical about the way you put them together.
Well, an archaeologist needs to be.
True. Yes, he does, doesn't he?
I mean, I guess I kind of do see myself actually as a archaeologist in a way. I mean, I'm obviously first and foremost an artist, but my work is so based in history and like object, and so I feel like it almost is.
Why is that? I mean, is that just is it a passion, an obsession?
Well, I think background, as I was telling you earlier,
your dad's a historian.
My father's a historian
at NYU.
At NYU, and a professor of African history. And although he's not an archaeologist per se, there is a kind of archaeology to his work.
I mean, and anthropology as well.
In our house, we have so many African artifacts and things of that nature. So it's kind of hard not to
have felt that influence.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Now, do you use molds for some of these?
Yes, these I use.
Where do you take them from?
All molds. Well, I made the molds.
You make the molds?
Yeah, I made the molds out of silicone, and it's super fine casting plaster.
But where do you get the form from?
I got them from a metaphysical supply shop.
Okay.
Yeah. And at this shop, they had all kinds of Egyptian detritus, so to speak, and so that's exactly what I was looking for. Were these kind of
you make the detritus
statues?
Yeah.
Well, exactly, and then I kind of they kind of all broke up, and I had all these pieces, and so this shelf really, to me, referenced like what you see at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the Egyptian collection, just these repetitive shelves of just bric-a-brac, historical.
Well, it's what it's like cracked pottery. It's like that it survives.
Cracked pottery is a great metaphor. Like I love the idea of like cracked pottery, like this incomplete piece of like a whole that's lost to time. You'll never be able to put it back together. It's collage museum imagery with graphite, creating like a extensive totem.
Right. Right. Why didn't you use the form of the obelisk?
Because I liked the flat top nature of this. For some reason, like aesthetically in my mind, the obelisk is used here like sculpturally, as you see.
You have them almost as sentinels too at the entrance.
The obelisks are, as you enter, which is typical to the Egyptian temple. The Egyptian temples had like two obelisks. So this to me are like my minimalist referencing, of this plinth, this monolithic object, but it's also very ancient too. So I felt like it's an amazingly historically loaded subject. And the same with this, just the idea of like a totem or a gradation, like a minimalist trope of singular, monochromes.
But using the base.
Well, mixed in with this base from antiquity, I thought was a fascinating juxtaposition. I felt like it could send your imagination off in many
soaring.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting about the head over here that you've sort of put together in a collage way.
That head is about 13 different heads.
Yes, I know. But what's interesting is that you managed to find commercial imagery that replicates the construction of your work.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, you can see almost these sort of surgical cuts. Yeah. I like that.
So that and I like the idea too of these being like, they're pages from a book, but some of the information has been edited out or turned into some kind of minimalist object, and so I feel like that has a lot of places that you can.
Well, also there's always a textual component to any kind of museum show. So there's this kind of explanatory sort of
like a didactic panel.
Absolutely. Yes, totally. And then when we move over to the actual the portraiture, if you want, do you want?
Sure. Okay. I mean, I find like that a space like this is really ripe for fantasy, because I feel like museums themselves, like when you think of going to a museum as a kid, it's all about fantasizing and fantasizing about the past and people who lived and objects, and that's kind of what I wanted to invoke in this space, is a place where you can totally just imagine, like almost like you're a child again. Like kids love this show. For better, for worse, like kids absolutely go. I mean, bananas. I mean, kids love Egypt. I don't know any kid who probably doesn't love Egypt. It's about death and life after death. I mean, ancient Egypt was a death cult after all, and I think that's why we're
these
really
tombs
obsessed with it.
The pyramids themselves are.
It's like Christianity. It's Christianity in a different kind of way, in the sense that these people were obsessed with like life after death. It was almost like you living as a person are meaningless because you're going to die and live forever.
Sure, which would explain why they took all of these splendid things with them.
Exactly.
They were for the afterlife.
In ancient Egypt, you spend almost your entire adult life planning for your death, from age like 18 to whenever you die. You have. Yeah. Well, see, that's why there's not much that much difference between contemporary.
Maybe I'm Egyptian.
Western culture and ancient Egypt.